Guten Morgen nochmal. Ich glaube, ich kann mich gar nicht daran erinnern, wie lange es her ist, dass ich vor so vielen Millennials, wie das bei uns ja so sehr schön die Zielgruppe genannt wird, im Unternehmen gesprochen habe. Und ich habe mich versucht, ein bisschen zu besinnen, an welchen Vortrag ich mich noch erinnern kann, als ich in der Uni war und was mich besonders, was mir im Gehirn hängen geblieben ist. Und ich erinnere mich an ein Wochenendseminar über Werbung, Advertisement, und der Professor hat damals, es war ein bisschen ein lauterer Saal und wir waren nicht ganz so aufmerksam, wie ihr das heute seid, und der Professor hat auf einmal seine Hosen runtergelassen. Das werde ich heute nicht machen, und ich habe anstatt ein Foto mitgebracht, und zwar ist das ein Foto, ist noch gar nicht so alt, ist einen Monat alt, und zwar ist es in Indien gemacht. Und ich glaube, es ist sehr symbolisch eigentlich für meinen Weg innerhalb von Unilever und auch meinen Weg als Katja Freiwald. Und es fing eigentlich alles an vor vielen Jahren, als ich meinen Uni-Abschluss auch fertig hatte, wollte ich an ein Unternehmen gehen. Unilever war auf der Liste und dann dachte ich mir so, ach ja, bevor ich das jetzt eigentlich mache, reise ich doch erstmal noch ein bisschen durch Amerika, bin dann nach Bolivien, nach Südamerika etc. Und dann ist mir aufgefallen, in vielen der Dörfer dort gab es keine Unilever-Produkte, aber was ich gesehen habe, überall Coca-Cola. Und habe mich damals gefragt, ob ich doch vielleicht lieber zu Coca-Cola gehen sollte. Aber, muss ich ehrlich sagen, war ich ein bisschen faul und habe keine Bewerbung mehr geschrieben und bin dann zu Unilever gekommen damals. Und warum erzähle ich das jetzt eigentlich? Und was hat es mit diesem Bild auf sich? Und zwar ist meine Arbeit als, ist glaube ich ein bisschen fancy, Global Partnerships and Advocacy, aber eigentlich ist es nichts mehr, als wirklich sehr tief mit unserem Unternehmen zusammenarbeiten. Wir haben vorhin über Supply Chain gesprochen. Ich arbeite sehr viel mit unserem, was wir Customer Development Teams nennen, zusammen. Und zwar baue ich Modelle und Businessmodelle mit unseren Teams in den Ländern, wie zum Beispiel hier in Indien zusammen, wo wir wirklich Social Business und unser Business einfach zusammenbringen. Die Frau, die ihr hier seht, ist Mita. Und Mita ist eine von unseren 80.000 Entrepreneurs, die wir in Indien haben und die unsere Produkte verkaufen und die dadurch einfach für sich auch ein neues Einkommen bekommen haben, die wirklich für sich und ihre Familien eine bessere Zukunft dafür kreiert haben. Ich spreche nachher noch ein bisschen mehr darüber, wie die Modelle funktionieren, aber für mich hat es eigentlich so das Bild rund gemacht. Und meine Karriere bei Unilever hat überhaupt nicht da angefangen. Ich bin ein ganz klassischer Marketier gewesen, habe ganz viel im Verkauf gearbeitet und bin erst vor 5 Jahren eigentlich in diese Rolle reingeschlüpft. Und zwar kam ich an einen Punkt, wo ich mir gesagt habe, ja, das Marketing, das ist ja alles ganz gut und schön. Ich habe für Knorr gearbeitet zu der damaligen Zeit und habe irgendwie für mich selber ausgemacht, dass es eigentlich noch nicht das ist, was ich eigentlich machen möchte. Und es war in der Anfangsphase von Paul, wo ich auch, glaube ich, so ein bisschen auf dem Scheideweg stand. Ist das jetzt eigentlich noch meine Zukunft in der Wirtschaft oder möchte ich doch lieber was anderes machen? Ich habe einen sehr radikalen Schnitt eigentlich dann für mich innerlich gemacht und habe gesagt, ich möchte jetzt die Welt verbessern, dieses ganze kapitalistische System ist überhaupt nichts für mich, habe mich bei einer NGO beworben, habe einen Vertrag unterschrieben mit der World Bank in Südafrika und einen Monat bevor ich fliegen sollte, ist das Funding fürs Projekt gestoppt worden. Und da stand ich nun und dachte mir, was ist jetzt weiter? Und wie der Zufall so wollte, hat mich der Paul zu dem Zeitpunkt selbst gefragt, ob ich nicht ein Projekt für ihn machen möchte. Zu der Zeit war Sustainability, vielleicht ein paar hundert Leute im Unternehmen haben sich damit beschäftigt, aber war sehr, sehr in der Anfangsphase. Dieses Projekt hat mir wirklich die Augen geöffnet, war ein Projekt in Bangladesch gegenüber Malnutrition von Kindern, wie man das als Industrie und mit dem NGO-Sektor zusammen adressieren kann. Und von diesem Zeitpunkt an fiel eigentlich alles zusammen. Ich habe an der Unilever Foundation gearbeitet, die gegründet wird, glaube ich, auch so ein Milestone, wo man sagen kann, eine Foundation sieht man in vielen Unternehmen heutzutage. Für uns war das damals ein Zwischenschritt zu dem Modell Sustainable Business. Und ich glaube, es ist auch okay, dass Unternehmen diesen Schritt machen. Und für mich ist der Schritt weitergegangen in die Rolle, wo ich jetzt einfach bin, wo ich wirklich sehe, dass ich mein Marketingwissen, mein Verkaufswissen und diese Erfahrung jetzt über Partnerschaften und Advocacy einfach zusammenbringen kann. Und es ist nichts mehr, was getrennt ist. Es ist wirklich literally zusammengekommen in einer Funktion und so wird bei uns Sustainable Business auch gelebt im Unternehmen. Und ich wollte gar nicht so viel über mich erzählen, aber ich glaube, das gibt einfach auch so ein bisschen an, wie bestimmte Sachen zusammengekommen sind im Unternehmen. Und eine Sache, warum ich das auch immer sage, was mir sehr wichtig ist meine Karriere oder mein Weg war nie irgendwie getrieben durch Karriere, Ambitionen, sondern einfach immer mit dem, was ich geführt habe und was für mich der richtige Purpose, heißt es, sagt man das bei uns, was für mich richtig war. Und ich glaube, das ist ganz gut, so eine Message einfach zu kriegen, wenn man im Studiengang sitzt und wahrscheinlich sich auch fragt, was will ich dann eigentlich mal irgendwann machen, in welche Richtung will ich gehen. Und ich glaube, für mich ist es einfach ein Appell, bevor ich anfange, über Unilever zu sprechen, sich einfach ab und zu auch mal zu reflektieren und zu gucken, was man dann wirklich will und was man denkt, das richtig ist und nicht immer blind darauf zu vertrauen, was einem gesagt wird. Ja, so viel dazu. Und ich glaube auch, ich habe mir sagen lassen, viele der Studenten hier sind im Marketing-Studiengang. Eine Sache, die mir auch sehr am Herzen liegt, ist, glaube ich, einfach zu sagen, es ist wichtig, was man beim Studium lernt und was man hört, aber letztendlich, wie sich alles weiterentwickelt. Ich glaube, als ich angefangen habe, Marketing zu studieren, was wir gelernt haben, ist heutzutage wahrscheinlich weniger relevant und ist einfach nicht mehr das Skillset, was gebraucht wird. Und das verändert sich, ich kann glaube ich sagen, wahrscheinlich sogar monatlich, jährlich. Und ich glaube, ein Marketier oder eine Verkaufsperson heute muss genauso viel wissen über Profit and Loss, wie er wissen muss über Climate Change oder Sustainability. Und ich glaube, diese Veränderung ist einfach was sehr schnell geht, aber was ich finde, was auch wichtig ist. Und der Appell von mir, einfach mit offenen Ohren und Augen durchs Leben gehen und einfach auf sein Herz öfters mal zu hören und sich nicht immer nur vom vorgegebenen Weg einfach leiten zu lassen. Ist auch alles fundiert, sehr gut vom World Economic Forum. Sieht man auch ganz deutlich, dass dieses Ganze, was wir System Thinking nennen, dass das wichtiger und wichtiger ist. Und ich glaube, darum finde ich es auch einfach so spannend, so wie die Vorlesungen bei Ihnen gestaltet sind oder die Wichtigkeit von Nachhaltigkeit, finde ich nicht nur spannend, sondern einfach auch extrem wichtig, weil das genau die Zukunft ist, in der wir uns bewegen. Von dem Moment an jetzt werde ich ins Englische wechseln, weil ich wirklich sagen muss, ich habe jetzt so lange in Belgien gearbeitet, was mir gestern Abend natürlich auch sehr viel Freude beschert hat, dass ich auch auf 2 Gleisen hier fahren kann. Und nachdem Deutschland ausgeschieden ist, habe ich mich gefreut, dass wenigstens meine Wahlheimat weitergekommen ist im Fußball. Aber in diesem Sinne, I will just switch into English because a lot of the things that we are doing in Unilever is English as business language. And I just want to start off with a little bit of overview about Unilever, and Frau Meyer did say already. There are a couple of interesting facts about Unilever. I think apart from the fact that we are really present in more than 190 countries, we are selling in really 100 countries where we have business operations, but that also shows that our impact is not only in the countries where we are selling, but the 190 countries are also countries where we are operating in, be it through supply chains, be it factories, etc. But really the business is based in 100 countries. The statistic is a bit outdated, but more than 2.5 billion consumers use a Unilever product every day. This is a big number, has a big responsibility, but also a big opportunity, because if you touch the lives of 2.5 billion people a day, you better do this in the right way. And then there are 170,000 employees that Unilever employs, and there are a lot of brands there. And I was asking yesterday to Suzanne and Vanessa how interactive the lectures are, so I just going to put a question out there. What do you think, how many brands does Unilever have in their portfolio? Just a number, it's not 110. What do you think? How many brands? 100? Some more? Frau Meyer.
We don't know the number, but we know special brands like that.
Yeah.
And this concept, we all do mushroom and dairy ice cream, and we know the new brand, Zucker.
Yeah. So it's literally 400 brands, which I think is a tremendous high amount of brands. And I'm not going to go further and ask what kind of brands do you think. I think you mentioned a couple of them, but I think you would be surprised how many brands are really belonging to Unilever. And a very interesting phenomenon between developed markets like Germany and developing markets, that in the developing markets, Unilever as a company is much better known than in Germany, for example. And the association that is made between the brands like Dove, Knorr, and the mother brand Unilever is much, much stronger in developing countries than in developed markets, which is really an asset for us as a company as well. Just to give you a little bit of an idea what kind of brands we are talking about, I've decided to focus on one brand which I particularly like a lot, which is called Sunlight. And I don't think it's even sold in Germany, but it's one of the biggest brands that we do have in Africa. And it's one of our first brands that Unilever launched when Unilever started as a company. And the gentleman over here is Lord Lever. And I have to say, being very passionate also about women's economic empowerment, and I'll speak about this later, I think this guy has been a visionary, and I would go as far as saying that Paul Polman is probably a very good kind of follow-up if you look decades and centuries further, because he started with purpose or sustainable living in his mind. He didn't call it that way, but he started that way. So the first product of Unilever, one of the first products, was a soap. And why has a soap something to do with sustainability or purpose? Because at the time when this product was launched, his mission was making cleanliness commonplace. At the time there was a lot of dirt. It was a very different life than we do have now. But I think where I'm most fascinated about, that he was thinking already about the effort and the heavy work and the heavy lifting that women in the time had to do their laundry. And interestingly enough, this is something which has not changed. I mean, there's a lot of innovation, etc., that made laundry easier. But I think the idea of sharing housework, sharing household chores is still an issue which is in many countries a not equal distributed task. So I think he was really a pioneer, and we are still inspired by him, and very often we just bring back this piece of history. Now, looking nowadays, I think the challenges that they faced at the time, some of them, as I said, remain the same, and some of them are just increasing. There are a lot of different challenges that we are facing today. So I'm very sure that you're probably teaching about this, but there are more than 2.4 billion people that don't have access to the toilet. There are almost 1 billion people that still go to bed hungry every night. Climate change is something which we cannot shy away. I was listening yesterday to the radio where I heard in Saxony or Saxony-Anhalt, where I come from, that a lot of the rivers are for the moment not carrying waters anymore, like a couple of centimeters. So water scarcity is a big, big issue, which is not only something which is far away in Africa or in Asia, it's something that will be also impacting us as consumers and people, to your point, one planet. So I don't think that things that have been far away are still that far away. So these kind of challenges are all still there. And also us as economists, as people in business or want to be in business, have a responsibility there. And I just want to start off on a good note, because I think it's very depressing if you hear all of these statistics. But I think what we also need to realize is that there is a lot of progress that has been made over the past 15 and 30 years, when the Millennium Development Goals, the pre-successors of the Sustainable Development Goals, were set. They were set out at the time to halve the number of people living in poverty. And seriously, this has been achieved. And yes, there is still way more challenges that are out there and need to be addressed. And hence, that's why the Sustainable Development Goals, which I'm not going to talk about in more detail today, but this is really a big Bible and guidance, not only for development or international development agency. This is the Bible for all of us now. this is the goals that we all going to be measured on. And not only going to be measured, but they're going to be responsible for if we achieve them. My children going to have hopefully a good planet or a good earth that they are living on. Your children, I'm sure you're probably not thinking about this yet, but I think this is something where we have a responsibility for the next generation. And you are actually the generation that has much more the opportunity to really steer this in the right way. And within Unilever, I just want to give a little bit of an idea here. We were talking yesterday about it. We're going to come to the Sustainability Living Plan, and I know you have heard a lot about this. But for the moment, there's a very interesting period for us because the Unilever Sustainability Living Plan is getting to its end time in 2020. So what's next? And I think what is a really brilliant and a great idea what we have done, or what Paul actually has really instrumented us to do, is working much more with young people in our organizations and young people around us. So the creation of the new, I would say the USLP 2.0 is something which is co-created with youth, with millennials, to really get your voice in there. And I think that's something which you might think that's great and it's a good thing, but it's also then a big responsibility. And so that's something I just wanted to share, that this is kind of the thinking within our company for the moment. I think that also results out of the fact that Paul at the time was one of the business leaders that really has sat on the table to influence the goals themselves, but also the role that business has to play. And I'm not going to leave it. I'm going to have another question, and I hope that some of you are going to be a bit braver and give some answers. So why do you think it is so important for business to be at the table? And why is it so important for business to help solving these challenges? Und es geht auch in Deutsch, also das Englisch soll keine Hürde sein. Das ist für mich einfach nur einfacher, den Content in Englisch rüberzubringen. Any ideas? Yeah. Ja. Others? Dankeschön. Und dann vertraue ich da einfach mal drauf und hoffe und trotzdem appelliere, dass es wichtig ist, seine Stimme oftmals einfach zu erheben, wenn Sachen nicht stimmen und wenn Sachen einfach nicht richtig sind. Und ich glaube, das ist was in der Zukunft, was ich auch lernen musste, dass man einfach sich mutigerweise auch mal hinstellt und sagt, so ist es einfach nicht in Ordnung. Und das ist einer, der das ganz gut kann und der für sehr viel Unruhe im Unternehmen gesorgt hat, als er bei uns angefangen hat, der Paul Pohlmann. Und ich muss sagen, einer der Gründe, warum ich im Unternehmen geblieben bin. Und seine Key Message war für uns immer, und eigentlich klingt es so einfach, es gibt keinen Business case of poverty. So there is no business case of enduring poverty. And that's actually something which is very simple, because if people don't have money to spend, if they don't live in good conditions, the companies will not grow. So what's the point in not supporting this? So he really put this in a very easy narrative, and then he translated this obviously in a vision for Unilever, which resulted in the Unilever Sustainable Living Plan, which is, and I know you know this all very well, which is anchored on 3 areas. So on really the target of improving the health and well-being of 1 billion people. 1 billion people, it's a lot. Of reducing or halving our environmental impact, and really increasing our social impact by enhancing the livelihoods of 1 million, of millions of people. So this was kind of the Bible, and when this started, there was still a lot of skepticism in the company, and it was still seen as, this is the sustainability agenda, and then there's the business agenda. While in the vision of our CEO, this was already one combined agenda. And it took us also quite some time, and I said yesterday, I still remember when this was launched, it was in a big room in the Netherlands, and people were looking at this and were like, what is this? How are we going to drive business with this? So the message from me is also, it's a journey, and it's okay that some companies are starting at a very different pace, and I think it's important to really bring also the voices of business together and help them together on this journey, because it also does not help us as a Unilever being always the big and good company that is also always put as case study in a book. I think one of the key targets, and this is also what my role entails when we speak about advocacy, is how do we mobilize collective action of other companies, even our competitors, to really move in that direction, because one company alone can also not change the role of business in the current context. And I think what really helped on this journey to make this anchored much more in the business, and I have the pleasure, the advantage that I'm based in a country office, so I hear on a day-to-day basis also what are the challenges from the operational marketeers and salespeople that are pushed on a daily basis. You need to have your targets reached. And then there's a global team that has the beautiful kind of, that's the business case for sustainability. So I think it was really a challenge for us to bring both of these things together. And I think this kind of framework has really helped us. And it's not rocket science, it's quite easy. It's very basic economics. So what is sustainable business for us, and why is there not sustainability and business, and it's more an integrated way? So there are 4 key areas how we measure and how we see sustainability has a role to play for our business. So the first one, if you're looking, starting, probably that's what the supply chain people like a lot, it's about lowering costs. So I think one of the elements in lowering costs, for example, to give one example, we have looked at our supply chain, looked at our tea plantations, our factories, their energy levels, their waste levels, and what we have seen is by installing or by working with more sustainable solutions. So one example in India, where I've been very actively involved, is working actually with solar entrepreneurs in India that have put solar technology on our plants in India, reduce tremendously the cost of energy, so it brings a lot of savings to us. Less risk. Unilever is a company that has huge supply chains. We are the biggest tea buyer, for example, in the world. 9 to 10% of the world's tea is bought by Unilever, so you can imagine what big of a responsibility this is, but also what big of a risk. Many of the tea plantations are in areas where there is water scarcity, where climate change is really hitting. So if we are not working on really building more resilient value chains, working with the communities together, in the future we don't have a supply chain anymore. If you don't have a supply chain anymore, you don't have products to sell. So that's the way of business case if you look much more from that angle in supply chain. Then one which you are probably most passionate about, if you look from a marketing perspective or a sales perspective, sustainability does drive growth. And I'll come to that in a second and share a couple of examples on how the growth has been delivered over the past. I can tell you already it's very much consumer driven. And then speaking about more trust, just one example on how sustainability builds more trust for us as a company. In many countries we are recognized as the #1 employer. And now you're going to say, why is that so important? But there is going to be a war for talent in the future. So you better make sure that you as a company attract the best talent in the future to run your business in the most competitive way. So this is a very, very simple framework. And if there's interest, I'm happy to also share a bit more detail for you in the future to read about. But this really helped to get people on board of the journey. So I said I'm going to dive in much more in this, how does it drive growth? And as I said, growth is very much driven. And some of our internal research that we have done is that says that 54% of consumers today really say that they want to buy with sustainability in mind. And you know why this number is so high? Because it's your generation. Your generation does care much more, and these are the future consumers for our company and for many other companies. And if you look at this, it's obviously a journey, but out of these 54% consumers that make a conscious or that want to buy with a conscious choice for sustainability, 33% already doing so, have started to do so, and there's still a part of the consumers that haven't done, but that are willing to do. So this is a huge, huge potential. So this is not anymore a niche market where we say, it's nice to speak about sustainability. This is mainstream, and this is the source of our business growth in the future. If you look at Unilever itself with our 400 brands, 26 of them are now what we call sustainable living brands. Now you're going to say, well, 26 out of 400 is just a very small number. What we have done, we have classified our portfolio in what we call our $40 billion brands. And that's where we started to do our work, because these are also the brands that have the biggest impact on society, but also have the biggest impact for us as a business. So if you look at these brands and the growth of these brands, 70% of Unilever's annual growth comes through the growth of these brands. And I think this is a very important number. And equally, if you look at the last number, that the brands that have a sustainable purpose or a mission or a vision, I'll come to this and how we classify and define that. But sustainable living brands grow 46% faster. And if that's not an appealing business case, I think there's something wrong. Having said that, we are not looking only at our current portfolio, because we also know that we are a mass market company, and a lot of the innovation, particularly in the space of sustainability, is driven by very small and innovative brands. And so what we have done over the past years is we really have looked at our acquisition strategy and invested in companies that really are very complementary to our current portfolio, but help us to also drive further that competitive advantage on sustainability. I'm not going to go into Puka, because I know you have heard a lot of this already in your past lectures, but I'm going to share you in a second ad around seventh generation, which is one of the recent companies that we have acquired. Myterra and Sandial are some others. These are all B Corp defined and certified organizations. And just maybe instead of going in depth in all of them, just a message from my side is, we were talking about what is Unilever doing with these companies. You buy them and then you integrate them in the business, and then they become all kind of Unilever-like. This is not the way that we have chosen. So what we do with these companies, we leave them as they are for the moment. They are part of Unilever, but they operate as they have operated before. Because for us as a company, it's not only important to get this sales or turnover into in our profit and loss calculation, but it's much more to have this expertise. And if you take, for example, seventh generation, which is a household care cleaning product, one of our biggest categories is home care. So we can then learn a lot from them. So what we're trying to do is let them run, help them to grow their business. So we also put people from Unilever in there to help them really to kind of go through that phase from you are a startup and then you need to grow, so they can learn from us in that perspective. But we also let them run their advertisement as they want, etc. They are not in guidelines with Unilever. So I'll show you one where you would say, is this really a Unilever advertisement? It's not. Let's see if that functions.
Seventh generation gets the ingredients in their laundry detergents from plants, not petroleum. And this stuff...
So I think this is a case for Felix now. Kennt ihr die? Da sieht man es aber. Bis der Felix fertig ist, CEO von Seventh Generation, von der kleinen, so klein sind sie auch nicht mehr, von der Firma, ist jetzt eine Dame, die bei uns vorher im Homecare-Business sehr aktiv war, die hat viele Brands im Homecare geleitet und hilft jetzt, sie ist wirklich jemand, der sehr purpose-driven ist, so das ist auch sehr wichtig in die Unternehmen, wenn wir Leute da reinbringen, wirklich Leute, die auch verstehen, warum es einfach so wichtig ist, diese Pioniere bei uns im Portfolio zu haben, aber der Austausch funktioniert über Leute hauptsächlich und jetzt funktioniert das auch hier.
Seventh generation gets the ingredients in their laundry detergents from plants, not petroleum. And this stuff beats stains. It's kind of a big deal. Let me tell you, it squashes 60 of your toughest stains. And leaves your clothes looking ravishing. So let us make the right choice and choose seventh generation's plant-based detergent. Was that too corny?
Seventh generation, powered by plants, tested on 60 of your toughest stains.
So it doesn't look like Unilever if you see it in the first place, but that's also the purpose, to really keep them alone. Yeah, perfect, thank you very much. Well, I want to just share about seventh generation, and that's something what is relevant for all of the brands. The seventh generation is obviously a very purpose-driven company, but also the brand itself is very purpose-driven. So what we've tried to do when we've worked through our brands, which is part of my job, to really help the brands to understand what is their purpose and how can a purpose be credible for them as a brand. So we've tried to find a couple of principles. And the three things that we always say to the brand teams is, one is, pick an issue that really matters. In that case, environment is something, climate change, etc., is a big, big issue that matters to the world. But make sure that is an issue where you can motivate your consumers with. And again, environmental issues is something where a lot of consumers get more conscious about and are also interested about to solve it. And then thirdly, and I think this is one of the most important things, it needs to be authentic and credible for the product and for your brand that you're working with. So you cannot start tomorrow probably taking a seventh generation and say, let's fight hunger in the world. Not going to work. So really finding that space, what is credible for you as a brand, and it's really credible to the consumers, then it will also result into business impact. And just to give you an idea, some of the brands, it always looks very nice on paper. With some of the brands, this process takes 2 years. Yeah, so it's also finding the purpose, coming back, re-evaluating. So it's not a very straightforward process. I've said that we have brought a lot of new companies into our portfolio, but what we also do is we create new brands. And before doing this is a very big investment of resources. So you better make sure as a company that what you create is also something which is really relevant to your consumers and to the strategy. So one of the reasons brands created, one is a brand Love, Beauty and Planet, and then another brand which is called Red, and it's all about vegan food. Is something what we didn't have in our portfolio. I mean, our foods portfolio was very much dominated by Knorr, but this is, for example, a solution for new consumers that are not part of our current food portfolio. So this is also work that we are doing, but to be very honest, a huge amount of the work and resources obviously goes through the mainstream brands that are driving our biggest part of our profit and loss. So one of the brands that is important to Unilever is Domestos, for example. And Domestos is one of the sustainable living brands. And the reason why I've just shown this example here is it has been a brand in the last year, in 2017, which has really taken sustainability as an inspiration of innovation in their portfolio. Because very often purpose is also seen as something, well, let's fight a cause, but it's not seen as something which could drive innovation within your product portfolio. So Domestos is a big brand in South Africa. And I think you're probably all very much aware over the last year, water scarcity has been a huge issue in South Africa. And what does these two products, do they do? So this left one here is a powder, and it helps to clean toilets without any water usage. And the other one is a spray, which really means that you don't need a lot of water, so it really helps you to reduce water usage. So these are kind of the innovations that sustainability can also bring huge success, because people had to be very conscious about water scarcity. There was no option anymore. In South Africa, the situation was, in some the case that you had a certain liter of water that you were allowed to use as a household. So I think if your situation is as hard, these innovations are very much welcome and driving business. So I hope that this is going to work now a bit better. Explain it.
Esse é um comercial humano, porque às vezes a gente deixa a vida passar assim. Aqui deveria ter cenas de pais e filhos brincando, amigos jogando bola, namorados cozinhando. Pensando nisso, temos um convite para você. Não deixe sua vida passar em branco. Vá, viva, porque isso já faz bem. E ajude a preencher nossa campanha com esses momentos. Porque bons momentos marcam.
This is Rory. Her soft skin feels great, but her heart feels even better. She knows Love Beauty and Planet uses roses from farms that support local communities. So Rory gets soft skin and gives a little love to the planet.
What is this? It's like a little vanilla tasty thing. A vanilla thing? They chopped it up in little pieces like this little dots.
Natural vanilla, milk and fresh cream, and only sustainably farmed vanilla.
Very simple.
Friars, the good vanilla. It's simple. We're proud to use non-GMO sourced ingredients in some of America's favorite flavors.
Isso não é só um comercial, é a sua vida. Pessoas compartilhando os seus momentos. Gente como você, que se joga, se diverte, porque bons momentos marcam sua vida e suas roupas. Ou multi-ação resolve de primeira para você aproveitar mais e mais. Viva, compartilhe e se suje. Ou multi-ação resolve de primeira porque bons momentos marcam.
Dia hanya seorang anak kecil. Kawan-kawannya tak ada yang mau bermain bersama. Kulit adalah cerminan kesehatan kita. Jagalah selalu.
That was just to give you a little bit of some examples in terms of what the brands do with purpose and how do they translate this into their communications. Maybe 2 points on that. So the first one on Omo, or there were two on Omo in there. It's a brand whose purpose is all around what we call dirt is good. So it's a brand that really wants to stand for that kids should play, that they should go out. I think they're addressing an issue that a lot of kids starting sitting on their tablets, etc. So they really want to encourage much more enjoyment and play of children because it's good for their development. And speaking about partnerships before and the role that my team plays in there. So for example, this is an area which you cannot own on your own. So what we have done is put also a coalition together, what we call the Play Coalition, which is a partnership between Unilever, UNICEF, Lego is part of that, and some other companies that have really an interest in really driving this agenda collectively forward. So that's really something which I want to highlight on, that a lot of the issues you don't drive forward on your own. So now coming back to the USLP, how we call it briefly in Unilever, and I have already shared a couple of the examples around the first pillar on improving health and well-being. I just want to give a couple of highlights. So this is our reporting from last year. You remember 1 billion is the target over 10 years. And for the moment, we are at 601 million. And it's not relevant where things come from. But I just want to also give us a signal on what Paul always said to us is when we set this 1 million or 1 billion people target. Are we going to achieve this in 10 years? Like a lot of NGOs don't reach that, and they have more resources than we do have in many cases. So is this really realistic? And he always said to us, it does not matter. But if you set yourself a target of 500 million, you will go for 500 million, but you will not think transformational, systemic, to really get to 1 billion. Maybe in 2 years' time, we're going to end at 800 million. Is this a drama? No. But if you don't set your vision and your ambition really high, you also don't look into new innovative ways. And for example, one innovative way which came out, I said in the beginning that I started working in the foundation at the time at Unilever. And what we basically drive this 1 billion people impact. And so what was really important for us is to really think, how can we get other resources and how can we mobilize others to take this forward? So we have created for Lifeboy, for example, which is the biggest contributor to the target, a concept, a program. And we started to lobby this to the ministries of education. Can we bring this education to the schools? Can we add this into the curriculum? We will do the trainings, we will train the trainer, your teachers, etc. But we would never have this scale without looking for synergies with other partners. And then you would see all of a sudden also a lot of financial resources open up, because that is an issue which contributes to a bigger target which also the international development community has. So all of a sudden, if they also take their resources, take our models and use their channels, you all of a sudden come up with the numbers. And very interestingly, and I think you teach that probably in theory, obviously how this goes is also always like a hockey curve. In the beginning you really invest before it really takes off. It takes some time, and that's the time where you need to really have kind of the courage and stay with your vision, because that's a very difficult time to come to the tipping point where it really takes off. I'm not going to talk too much on Tomestos. How are you in terms of, you still want to see a little bit of communication? Yes? No? Well, it doesn't matter. I'm going to show you anyway some, because this is these are two Lifeboy. I'm sure you have heard about it. It's all around hand washing, educating children, educating new moms why hand washing is so important. It's one of the biggest causes of child mortality under 5 years old. So there is a big social issue that we address. The way the brand has done this is really interestingly, and it's a very kind of, I think that's the perfect model, I think, for a purpose-driven brand, and I'll come to it that not all brands can be like this. But it's very easy. If you teach people hand washing, people gonna use soap. if they use soap, the soap market is going to grow. If you are the leader in leading these kind of initiatives, your brand is going to grow. And Lifebuoy has been one of the fastest growing brands in the past. What I find, what they also do quite interestingly, and I heard that you have also lectures around social marketing, around digital marketing. And I think what they are really good in is developing pieces of communication that are not AdWords, but they really go in more digital channels. And I'm going to share with you two. So this is my absolute favorite one. I think you have seen what this does, and I mean the results on social media are amazing. And I watched it the first time, I had tears in my eyes, and I think that's as good as it gets in communication. And the good thing is they have not done this like this one film. I would be able to show you more, but I'm not going to do this because of working and also because of time. But I think one thing which is always what the Lifebuoy ads and then social media footages have in common is that they really are very emotional and really always start with the communities out. So it's a very engaging film. There's another film about where they have a pregnant woman and show her in an educational kind of setting the future of her child. She's sitting there with tears. So I think it's very important to really get this emotion in, and I think this is only possible if you have a brand which is purpose-driven. You'll never get into these kind of communication opportunities if you don't have purpose-led brands. So let me go back to this. So, and that's what I said before. It's like a bit the running gag. If we are working with the brands on their social missions and purpose, they always say, like, let's do a Lifebuoy. And there was a time where many of the brands really tried to find what is the equivalent for us for Lifebuoy, like Knorr, for example. How can you kind of look at a bouillon cube and a soap? What is our kind of behavioral change program on the ground? How can we do this? And in reality, not every brand has kind of the nature of a product that really allows this really very inclusive and holistic brand purpose. But the good news is, that's the bad news. So the good news is that there are different ways to do purpose. And again, that is something what we have found out over the past years, but doesn't mean that there are not many more ways, and probably there are many more. So I think one way is, and what I've explained with Lifebuoy, washing hands is really changing behaviors, is one of the ways on how to bring purpose alive. But then you can also use, be a brand that really invests directly in solving a particular... There we go. Bon. Sorry for that. Then you have brands that are investing in, for example, changing cultural norms. And I'm not going to show the Dove work, because I know you have done this in detail, but this is an example of a brand that really works with society and through their brand and through their, what they call Dove self-esteem program, on really influencing a norm in society. Do they really have like a behavioral change kind of to train people to use more Dove? No, that's not what it is. So it's a very different way of translating purpose. And then there are some brands that really mobilize people to take action. Ben & Jerry is a very good example of this. They are not running necessarily a lot of programs impacting millions and millions of lives, but they are an advocacy brand. They're really kind of, they're activists, and they want to mobilize and they want to trigger action. And not many brands have the credibility to do so. So that's a very different way of translating purpose. I'm going to skip that one. Why is it so important to have a purpose? Why does it matter, and what is a purpose? And also, not saying this is complete, but just a couple of examples or a couple of reasons why purpose matters from our research. We know it does drive penetration. And I think I gave a good example to that. It creates talkability. Look at the Lifebuoy film. It really engages people. It attracts millennials. I mean, you should know this better than I do. And also, it brings you out of this whole kind of price conversation, because it really allows you to attract your customers, consumers, in a very different way. Now, what is a purpose? Again, here, there's probably not a lot of literature, or maybe I'm wrong and I don't know the landscape of professors and people that you are working with. But from our side, to bring this very simply down to the audience of our marketeers, we always say purpose is something what makes you feel positive. It's something where you're going to take an action on, and it's something what has a commitment to make the world a better place. Probably scientifically not the best thing to explain it, but it's something what we feel from all the brands that we have worked with, it's workable. And this is something what I really do like, because there are a lot of people out there, and I think Unilever sometimes has to also learn that we are not good on both sides. What does it say, the do and the say? So the do is that we say a purpose-driven brand needs to have two, the do and the say. On the do side, it's really, how do you drive impact? What are you doing physically to create an impact? What is your program? What is your impact? And the say is, how do you speak about it? How do you engage others? And how do you bring this alive? And I have to say, historically, we have been always very strong on the do side of things, which I personally believe that it's better to be like this from an impact perspective. But we have been very weak sometimes to speak about what we are doing. And there are a lot of brands out there that used to be much better in going out and talking about a very small impact that they have created, but they make the huge kind of communication about it, which also had an impact. Well, we always said we need to have the whole theory of change in place. We have to promise what we have, or we have to deliver what we have promised. Everything needs to be ready in the do side of things before we at all speak about it. And I think in reality it's something in between both. So I think you cannot start, or you should not start your say, because also consumers are much smarter and through social media, etc. I think it doesn't keep long the credibility if you only do a say. But you need to have already a bit of your do in place. But you don't need to have already a program on the place which is impacting millions and millions. You can grow if you know what your purpose is, what you're going to do, and what you're going to say. It doesn't matter if the do is already 100% implemented. You need to start, but you don't need to have everything ready on day one. And then another element which I just want to share as well, if it comes to purpose-driven brand, and I think there are a lot of misdefinitions, or, well, misdefinitions is maybe not the right word, but a lot of different interpretations of what is a purpose and what does a purpose for my brand. And I think there's a difference between a short-term sales activation, which I would see as something like, you buy this product, you donate a school meal, for example, which is good and it has its reason to be there, but it needs to be in a bigger picture. The other side, the long-term brand building, is something, if you know as a brand where you are standing for, if you are a brand, for example, fighting hunger or improving nutrition, and you do a sales activation and providing free school meals, it perfectly goes together. But I think just doing like short-term activation does not bring you the return on investment that you want to see as a brand. And I'm not going to go into too much detail on this, but what we have seen, and there's a lot of studies behind that, and it's not new and it's not rocket science, but also here, like a lot of activations bring you a short-term increase, but they don't help you to build your brand over the long run. And what we also interestingly see is that activations very often attract consumers that are anyway buying your brand already. To get new consumers into your category or into your brand, it's much more important to also build on the long-term equity side of things. I'm just a bit conscious of time, so that was all what I wanted to share and kind of the first pillar around improving health and well-being, and I've chosen a couple of brands that fall into that territory. What I would like to keep out is not because it's not important, the second pillar on environment, but we could fill another 1.5 hours on that topic only, but want to move much more in the third pillar, which is closest to my heart and where I work quite a bit on, is all around how to improve and enhance the livelihoods of millions of people in our value chain. And there are different areas to that. So one is really creating what we call fairness in the workplace. And this is really across our whole value chain. It's really keeping up to human rights standards, implementing what we call sustainable sourcing policies. So how our workers, people in our value chain treated. The second one is all around how can we create opportunities for women in our value chain, and our target by 2020 is 5 million, so we have to do a bit of a hockey element now. And the last one is how to improve the lives of smallholder farmers in our value chain. Now, focusing and zooming in on the women's side of things, I just want to make one thing also very clear is there's a lot of conversation out there. Do we need to speak about women, and is this not very feminist? Is it not a bit outdated? The way how we speak about women, for us, it's about diversity, and it's creating opportunities for everybody in our value chain. And mainly, we are looking also at people that are excluded. And very often, women are excluded. They are not the only ones. There are also people that are disabled. There are very often young people that don't get the chance to come in the job market. So for us, it's a much wider agenda, but I'm going to be zooming on one of the target groups which has been historically very much excluded. And again here, and that's with every subject that we are speaking about, it starts with the business case and with the moral case. And if you look at gender, there is a business case and a moral case here. I think we don't need to argue about the moral case. I think from a business perspective, there's a lot of evidence out there, a lot of calculations, like I think the most famous one is the McKinsey study that really estimates like if women would have the same opportunities, it would add 12 trillion to the GDP globally. So I think there is no argument anymore that there is not a business case, and I think a lot of people have understood that. This is a lady out of Pakistan, and I just want to use her as a sort of idea to give you a framing on how we work with these women in our value chain. So I always speak about the tripod of rights, skills, and opportunities. So in the first place, working with these women in our value chain, we need to respect all kinds of human rights. Human rights would be if, for example, women are exposed to violence, sexual harassment, etc. This is the first thing we always come into if we work with these women, to make sure that they are free from that as far as we can influence that. But then we are looking further on how to provide them with the adequate skill sets and ultimately with the opportunities to really help them to build their businesses, for example, in that case of the Pakistani lady. Again, there's a lot of theory behind it, which I'm not going to go into. But also here, the model you have seen in the beginning, the business case for sustainability. There's a business case for gender equality, surprise, surprise. And for us as a company, there are very similar ones on also the responsible and resilient value chains, for example. A lot of people in our value chain are women, but are not getting the same resources than men are getting. For example, in our farmer networks on tea, very interestingly, we have done quite some studies and exposed women to the same trainings that men had. Guess what? Productivity goes up. So there are a lot of evidences out there that's really convinced our business to invest more in women. If you look at trust, for example, who are the ones that are making the buying decisions? Who are the consumers of our product, being the biggest personal care and home care business, or the second biggest in personal care? A lot of our consumers are women. If you don't have the trust of these consumers, your business is not going to be prepared for the future. So that's just a couple of examples. And again, the way how we drive this here is this what we call across the value chain approach, really looking into our own organizations. How many people, how many women are in leadership positions? Great progress over the last years, from 38% of managers to 47%. Even in our executive leadership team now, 1/3 are women. We are not there, but it's increasing. Then you look into your supply chains, how you work with farmers, factory workers. How do you work with salespeople, building these entrepreneurship models for women very much in the developing worlds, but then also on how can you use the power of your brands to develop purposes that are benefiting women, that are driving equality and diversity. And then what our team very much does, how can you use it at societal impact, society at large? How can you influence others on that? I'm just a bit worried on timing because I want to leave a bit of time for you as well. I'm just going to finish on this one, which is the program I started off with, of the lady called Meeta, who is a Shakti lady in India. And she actually makes part of what we call selling with purpose. And I think this is something very innovative. I think it comes very natural to marketeers like yours, that brands can have a purpose. But how do you bring sustainability in a hardcore retail business, which is driven by numbers, profits? So how do we really drive sustainability much more in that area? And I have to say, it also comes down to leadership. And we have, luckily, a really great guy, I have to say, our sales person that's leading the business. And he's so passionate about, and he has put out a mission there 2 years ago and said, we want to get 1 million more entrepreneurs into our value chain, and many of them will be women, so we have also a target on women. So 2 of the key programs that we have, that we are focusing on is, one, how can we get talkability at POS? I'm not going to talk about this because we have seen a lot of that, how the brands do that, but also there's a responsibility from the sales team. And then there's another one, how to create opportunities for people in our value chain through innovative business models. And 3 models that I work with the customer development team. So one is Shakti. Shakti does mean empowered women. And it's all about last mile distribution model, how we call that. The second one is really helping to get entrepreneurs building up there what we call mom and pop stores, the really kind of small shops in rural areas. And the third one is something you will be seeing in Germany as well. It's called Einwohlsvendors. It's really how to bring youth unemployed people into our value chain through internships and through a vendor activity selling ice cream. You might think it's a bit, selling ice cream, but it's not really like purpose-driven. But what it does is really helps these young people to find a step into economy. They get an education also on setting up their own businesses, etc. So it's a different way on translating business. Now, why are we doing this as a company? It sounds like I say always, it's very romanticized to train a woman and she's selling product. She earns a bit, but in reality, it's not as big for the company. Why should you do that? I can tell you, it's huge for the company. In India, 830 million people live in rural India. I think it's a big opportunity to unlock this and make sure that our products are distributed there, that we can sell there. And this did not happen. And over the past 15 years, the model has really grown, and it's contributing a significant amount to the growth of our Unilever India business. Now, for a long time, this stayed very much in India. And what we have done now, and this is a role also what we do as partnerships, we have codified that model. And we have looked at it and have said, okay, what do we need to really scale this up into other geographies? And guess what? The answer is you need a lot of partners, because you cannot do this alone. Creating a model like this, where a woman in rural India, and I can tell you, I've been working a lot with these women, walks like kilometers and kilometers from door to door, is not a big profit-making business. So you better make sure that if you run this business, that you share the costs, for example, with somebody. How do you best do this? By partnering up with either an company, or you partner up with NGOs that anyway have networks. So I think a big answer to that challenge is partnerships. Africa, same thing. I mean, 2 of the fastest growing economies in the world are from Africa. And Nigeria, which is not one of the fastest growing, but is one of the biggest economies in Africa, is a model where we have brought a model to. And this is hard work, and it doesn't work from one night over the other. But again, here we have been working a lot with partners to make this model viable. One of the biggest challenges these women face, you can train them, but what you see, like particularly many of these markets, and particularly women, they don't have a bank account. They don't have, in many cases, not even an identity. In India, the women, till last year, they did not have an identity card. They were no one. So what does it mean from a business perspective? They don't get any access to credit. So what we started to give credit ourselves to make the model work and make others inspired by the model. But this is not a sustainable approach. You need to convince financial providers to work with people like this, and these are just the tip of the iceberg. There are so many more women that are not micro retailers. So very interestingly, what we have done is we have partnered with MasterCard, which you all know very well, in Kenya, where we have a very similar model on setting up these stores. And interestingly enough is we have a history with these small-scale retailers. They buy from us year after year, and what you see, we have a history that do they pay on time? How are their sales going? And what you see, they're stagnating sales because they need access to capital. But this history was enough for MasterCard to give them credit, because they know these people gonna pay back.